My mother hated God, and we were raised to believe that anyone who believed in God or a higher power was a weak individual.
How does that whole journey sort of impacts children?
Extremely damaging because they're being lied to. They're being told, one thing, and their intuition is telling them another thing.
What could be the signs that, friends and family could look forward to if anybody is in their circle going through this?
As someone who's outside the cult, you can see, is there one person who's leading the cult or a group of people leading the cult? I think that what would have helped me understand my situation was actually like hard evidence.
Why spirituality is important, and how did you discover it, and how it's enabling you today?
So for me, spirituality is this very simple way of living life with the knowledge that there's more to the world that can be perceived through the five senses, and that there is a higher power.
We had an episode with Tammy around 2 weeks back where we discussed about her journey of trauma and its recovery. Today, we have somebody with us who is going to help us understand her journey and how she recovered from it, how she's enabling today. Because, many a times I have come across healers themselves or people on their recovery journey where they say, Pulkit, I'm yet to heal completely. And I also echo with them at, most of the time, because it's a journey to go through. It's a journey to navigate. It's not something you don't have a final destination, I would say, and I would want our guests to build on that. And yes, so I would just before I start the episode today, listeners, I'd like to say it's a journey we all are navigating, and probably there's no one pill fits all, or there's no one single solution. We all have our own journeys to navigate, and yes, we can support each other in the journey itself. So, without any further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker today. I'm really, really, honored to have Isabella Young with us today. 17 years ago, Isabella escaped a cult after enduring unimaginable trauma, including the tragic loss of her son. Her journey of healing led her to spend time in nature, expand her consciousness, and reclaim her sovereignty from deprogramming and manipulation. Today, she's an author, mentor, and guide, helping others identify and heal from cult programming, narcissistic abuse, and fear based mind control. There are a few more things to share about her, but I would let Isabella talk about it, about her book, and the journey she's on today. Welcome, Isabella.
Thank you, Pulkit. Thank you for that introduction. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. And thank you for providing a platform for people to share their experiences and their wisdom and the tools and practices that can help others along the journey, as you say, because it is, I think it's a lifelong journey of healing.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir. Isabella, privilege is all mine, and I'm really, really looking forward to our conversation today. So, Isabella, why don't we start with, understanding your journey, and can you share a little bit about the cult you were part of, and how did you realize the first step where the, the main thought process of the cult was really impacting you? It was leading to you not being able to identify yourself or not aligning with the overall vision of the cult. And how did you really recover from it?
How I got into the cult it's a big part of the story. And I was raised by a devout atheist. My mother hated God, and we were raised to believe that anyone who believed in God or a higher power was a weak individual. And so I had this superior attitude that somehow I knew better than other people. And it was very damaging because it wasn't until I was in my early 20s when I met a man who became my first husband, and he gave me some books to read, including Autobiography of a Yogi. And that really woke me up to the fact that there is more to life than just perceivable through the five senses. And we started a life together. And we both worked in outdoor education. I was teaching and he was teaching like rock climbing and snow skiing and taking people into the bush and all that. It was a fun life. We were also living on farm and working towards becoming self-sufficient. And I was 3 months pregnant with our second child when he went to work one day, and I got a knock on the door about 10 o'clock in the morning from the local policeman and a neighbor saying that he'd passed away. So that put a complete stop to my dreams, my relationship with my soulmate, and I couldn't live on the farm anymore. There was no way I could basically like chop wood and carry water with 2 children. And so that sent me on a long journey to try and find what I was going to do now, because I really didn't want to live anymore. That was the truth of it. It was just too painful. But I had 2 children. Well, one was on the way, so I had to find a reason for being, and also where I was going to call home now. So I went to India a couple of times. I also traveled around Australia a lot and stayed with different friends. And it was actually in a dream that I got a vision of a place just outside of Melbourne, because I'm, like I said, grew up in Australia, and the town was called Healesville, ironically. So I moved there and became part of a Steiner community. It's Waldorf education. Rudolf Steiner was a visionary from Germany in the 1930s, just an absolute genius. And he brought forth systems of agriculture called biodynamics and education. And anyway, he was a visionary. And so I was part of that community, but I still knew I still had a very strong death wish. So I did a shamanic course, a journey where we stayed blindfolded and in silence for a week, except when we came together in a temple space to prepare for our death, which was a guided meditation on the last morning. I had a huge out-of-body experience, and I met a couple of beings, including my husband who'd passed away, and I was told to go and start training, my spiritual training, because that become really important to me, with this individual who I hadn't met before. And when I got back from the course, he said, come meet me in New Zealand, which I did. And then he invited me to come be part of his ashram in Laguna Hills in California. So I got my children and moved over to the ashram, and it was a very strange dynamic. We ended up getting married, and we conceived a child, and we were living together in what I thought was an ashram with my guru, because I was familiar with that guru disciple relationship. I did want a guru. I wanted guidance. So I knew I had issues and wounds, and I wanted help to be free of those and actually to be enlightened at that point. That was what I thought was the goal. So we lived in this just a normal home on a cul-de-sac, and there were other homes around within a mile or two of the spoiler alert, cult headquarters. And people would come every day to serve the master, and that basically meant we had people cooking and cleaning and doing yard work and that sort of stuff. And in between, he would give his disciple training sessions and satsangs and discourses, and we had to do community service, and it was busy all the time, just typical cult practices where there's no time to really think or rest or form your own opinions. And it was just hell. It was really horrible right from the start, because he was has a narcissistic personality disorder, so everything's all about him, and we're all supposed to be serving his needs. And the fact is, he is telling everyone he's the second coming of Christ, the Maitreya, the Kalki avatar, and we were all his disciples who were there to serve his mission and help him save the planet or something. I remember thinking, oh my God, if he's the second coming, we are screwed as a race, because he's wasn't a good person, wasn't a nice person, didn't treat people well, and he would punish people if we didn't do what he wanted in the right amount of time or with the right attitude or whatever. So that was particularly true for the children. and in particular my son, who could see straight through him, and he didn't want to do what he was told to do, because often it was unnecessary or ridiculous, or like bowing to him, for instance. We didn't really want to do that. It was a part of being a disciple, putting flowers on his feet, all that sort of stuff. So he adopted a lot of traditions from different religions, but a lot of from the Hindu tradition. He just made stuff up too, and we were all supposed to go along with it. And after about 7 years, I really wanted to get out, but I just didn't know how, because we had a child together, and we were legally married. And in California, you can't move more than 2 hours away from a spouse if you're leaving the marriage. And I didn't even want to be in the States anymore. I just wanted to go back to Australia, but that was problematic, because then there was international child trafficking and all that I would have run up against. And also he had told me that he's my guru, so he's the only one who can free me. And so if I left him, I would be turning my back on God and whatever. So about 7 years into that experience, my son came home from school one day, and he was really upset. And I said, well, he didn't want to talk about it. And I said, why don't you go to bed? We'll talk about it in the morning. And in the morning, he was gone, which I knew there's something wrong right off. It's so unusual for him. And we reported him missing to the police by that afternoon. And the next morning, my ex said to his assistant to go look for him behind the house in this sort of wooded area. And he was found with a knife wound to his neck, and a big kitchen knife next to him. And that when that happened, it was immediately the cult leader said that my son had taken his life because he found out he was gay, and that was unacceptable to him, and it was unacceptable to me, so he'd taken his life. And that was just heinous lies, the whole lot of it, just lies. And then he blamed it on me. He said I was disobedient, I hadn't given my son the life that he wanted. And once again, I didn't even want to breathe after that. I spent 6 months just going like from breath to breath. I didn't want to get out of bed, but I had 2 children, so I thought I had to find a way back to living again. So I went to see this man who'd been the cult counselor, and because we were so wounded as disciples, we were really, we were all told how wounded and messed up we were. And so I went to see this counselor in the end, and I walked in the door, and he said, I knew you'd come and see me one day. You know you're in a cult, don't you? And I said, no, I don't know I'm in a cult. I thought I was in an ashram with my guru. And he said, go home and Google cult characteristics. So I did. And sure enough, there's the list of cult characteristics: a charismatic leader who's the arbitrator of truth, who controls everyone's waking hours and work and relationships, and whether they have children or sex or what we eat, what we wear. Then there's the love bombing, where it starts off, you're the most wonderful woman in the world, and then I'm the Antichrist. So that love bombing and hate bombing, and the gaslighting, which is a technique that's used by cult leaders and narcissists to make you think like you're going crazy. They doubt yourself. So they'll tell you that things that they'll say, oh, you said this, or we did that yesterday, and it's not true. So you start to doubt yourself. I remember that happened right from the start. When I look back, he was doing that to me like from day one. So there was the gaslighting, and the other one it's called psychological operations, or psyops. So he runs these, like he creates these scenarios, like suddenly he loses his voice and can't speak for a month, and we've all got to try and figure it out and learn sign language and all that sort of stuff. So just like plays games in order to get more power and control and make people more confused and fearful, because we didn't want to get punished or whatever. So once I read through that list, which included, and then there's the money. It's always about, these cult leaders are always about sex, money, and power. So everyone in the cult's required to tithe to him 10% of their gross income or any inheritances or house sales or whatever. And that's how he funds his lifestyle. And he's still going, he's still getting, he's got people who've been funding him for, nearly 20 years now. And then I knew I had to get out. So I think in the end, what he did was let me go because he knew that he was going to have another death on his hands, because I was just desperate, really. And I didn't have any help from my family, even though apparently they knew I was in a cult. And friends did too. Like, no one ever said you're in a cult to me. They said, they would have said they didn't like him at all. But that cult word never came up as a really serious issue. No one really got in my face and said, hey, this is a cult. And admittedly, at the start, I probably wouldn't have listened anyway, because I was pretty mentally ill, I think. And so I got out. I took my youngest daughter with me, and we moved to Kauai. And that's when my healing and my understanding of what had happened to me and why, that's when it really started.
I have seen the cult culture in India as well, where I live,
Yeah.
and there have been a lot of discoveries where people have come forward and share the stories they have gone through. I have built an understanding where there are a lot of traumas and abuses happening in a cult culture, especially with the females out there. And I can just imagine what you would have gone through. Um, Once again, thanks a lot for highlighting this and sharing with our listeners, so they can build their understanding. And if anybody is going through that in their own lives, they can probably see a ray of light through which they can start their journey of healing and recovery.
Yes. Yeah. The first step is realizing that you're in a cult, because if you don't know that there's a cage around you, and it's an invisible cage, because people will say, why didn't you just leave? But it's not that simple. It's like people who stay in abusive relationships. There's a lot of mind games that are used, like blackmail and all sorts of things that are used to keep people in an invisible prison. But once you recognize that there is a prison, then escape is possible. And then after that, once you're free, then healing can happen.
Do I have your permission to ask few follow-up questions on this?
You can ask me anything.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Isabella. You mentioned that you were a part in the cult along with your children. Um, in the formative years, the surroundings play a very important role in the overall emotional and cognitive development of a child. How do you think that whole journey would have impact, or how does that whole journey sort of impacts children and their overall development of emotional health?
Completely damages them in every way. Extremely damaging. And because they're being lied to. They're being told, one thing, and their intuition is telling them another thing. So they have to then deny their own knowing. They have to override their intuition, and they have to pretend and lie themselves, to not be punished and to fit in. It's extremely damaging. It was horrible, and I do. It's one of the things that I have to still, I have to forgive myself, because I was part of that. And as much as I tried to protect them, and that then I would get punished if I stood up for the children, I was still, they were still there. They were still being subjected to there was the emotional abuse, and there was verbal abuse, and there was spiritual abuse, and there was physical abuse. My son was made to write tens of thousands of lines of positive affirmation, like I will obey my guru, and stuff like that. So, then they were put in silence a lot, and they were only allowed to speak when he let them speak. They had to, pick up trash or pick up dog poop or do some kind of, hard manual labor. And, they were, of course, if they did something that wasn't in his, right for him, then they would not be able to do a whole lot of stuff, like go and see friends or have their computer or whatever it was. So the home environment was not a fun place for them, and they had to attend all the disciple trainings, which were on Sundays, that they would go from like 2 o'clock, sometimes for 6 or 8 hours. And that involved the cult leader sitting there in his chair with his, garland on and flowers at his feet. And he would just go around the group and basically make people cry and scream. He'd bring up past issues because he knew he'd bring up childhood wounds or what was happening in their relationships. And people would end up crying and catharting, which was very upsetting. We had the cops come to the house sometimes because the neighbors complained, and the children had to sit through all that. And then it was particularly for my children, that was really messed up. You'll understand this more than most of the people I speak to. So he told everyone, this is another psyop that he played, a psychological operation. He told everyone that the baby that I was carrying was the reincarnation of Lord Ganesha, who was going to come and remove all the obstacles between me and God and everyone else and God and help him with his mission. So there we had this, he was saying as a deity, and I had the other two children, and they were supposed to be worshipping their sister. And, she was up on a seat with her dad and being pranam to and garlanded and all that sort of stuff. So it was really, I know I used that word before, but it's just a lot of mind fuckery going on. So it was hell for them. It was hell for them. And I know that a lot of the things that I've learned have come, even still fairly recently, I'm learning about what happened in the cult and understanding what was really going on behind the scenes. So I found out that, we consummated the marriage and I got pregnant. He never touched me again for the entire marriage. He told me that at the start, he said I was too needy, that I was too much like a man, that I had done something wrong and I didn't deserve his touch, that I wasn't obedient enough or whatever. And then he just went the blanket statement like celibacy's for my best for my spiritual growth. Whereas meanwhile, he's having sex with the men in the cult. He's on the dating apps. He's going to the, Palm Springs in the gym, and he's hooking up all the time with men, and he's grooming the boys in the cult. And I know now that he had my son murdered. I'm supposed to say allegedly, to prevent my son from exposing him as a child predator. So there was a lot of it was bad for the children, and it's taken its toll too. I know both my daughters now have mental health issues, and as a result of the time with him in the cult. And I feel ashamed about that too. I feel like I should have protected my children.
You did your best, Isabella. You don't need to feel ashamed. And we all go through things, we take actions, or basis what's really happening around us, we all are evolving in our journey. I don't have a lot of words, I'm not able to articulate my thoughts. It's so shocking. And we do hear a lot of these things in news every now and then, but yes, actually, meeting somebody who has gone through it, it's a lot more overwhelming. And I don't know, I don't have the right words right now. I'm really sorry for that. Uh,
Yeah, it was a difficult situation, and sometimes there aren't words.
Something I would just like to say that I'm sure me and my listeners are there for you to support you in any manner we can.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
would like to understand from you what could be the signs that friends and family could look forward to if anybody is in their circle going through this, because as you mentioned, the friends and family didn't really come forward to support you in your journey. So if you can share some signs that we all should be always on lookout within our family members or within our friends, and we can guide them. So how to guide them is the next question follow up for this. But yes, what are some of the signs which we really need to put across? And at the same time, I would like to also you know build on to the similar point, where because when you are let's say a teenager, or you are in the early adult life of yours, often we are not very aligned, or we are in a rebellious mode most of the time. What our friends and families are saying, we really don't pay heed into that. So how do we really, at that moment, because I've had my own rebellion movements in my life where I rebelled, and I today realized that, okay, it was for my betterment what was being said to me. So how do we really get through that, to that individual, because who is not able to see that, where what's best for me, and I might be getting onto a path that really isn't meant for me.
Let's look at what at cults. And most people associate cults with religious groups, with churches and spiritual leaders, but cults can function in other settings as well, right? So a cult could be a political party or a sports team or a multi-level marketing group or even a family. My family functioned as a cult. My mother was my first cult leader, and she triangulated me and my brothers so we don't have relationships, and everyone was supposed to just go along with her, everything that she wanted. And if you didn't, then there was, you were basically out of the family. That's what happened to me. And then I've even seen how a cult can function in a relationship with one person who's the cult leader and the other person follows along as the cult member. So if you understand the dynamics of a cult, and then of course there's the big cult that I'll explain that later, but first get into the like a more of a microcosm of a cult. So if you can understand the principles of how a cult operates, then as someone who's outside the cult, you can see, is there one person who's leading the cult or a group of people leading the cult? So there's the power structure where there's the powers at the top, and then you've got a whole lot of people down the bottom who are following the rules of the directions of the leaders at the top. So if there's a pyramidal power structure, it's likely to be a cult, because usually as divine sovereign beings, no one has the right to have power over anyone, no one. And so anyone who's taking power over another person, they're out of line. And the other aspects of the cult, like I was mentioning, are so there's the control of everyone's money and time and energy and resources. And one of the main features of a cult too is being cut off from family members. So if you feel like your family members being being cut off from you, either, for me it was geographically, but it can also be they're supposed to like leave their family behind because that's going to be the best thing for everyone. So if you can identify some of the cult characteristics operating around in the group that your family members gone into, then you can know, okay, so they're in a cult and this is it. Then you know what you've got to deal with. You're up against a really powerful force that is holding your family member in ways that are they're psychological. So how are you going to deal with that? Well, some people say you shouldn't tell people that they're in a cult, because that will just drive them further into the cult, but then you'll have no contact with them at all. I've heard people say that, but if I hadn't been told I was in a cult, how long would I have stayed there? I don't know. What else would have gone on to finally snap me out of it? So I feel like there's a way to present information that isn't just like, oh, you're in a cult, then of course the first thing to do is attack the cult leader. Well, that's not necessarily going to work, because that person who's in the cult believes that they're like in love with the cult, sort of in love, really. What it's like with the guru. You love the guru more than anything else. You're devoting your life to the guru. So what I would have liked, just personally for myself, is if my family, and they had the resources to do this, was to get a private investigator in to follow him and get photographs of him with, when he said he was going somewhere, he wasn't actually there. He was, hooking up with another guy, or get a forensic accountant in and look at the bank account so I can see that the money's being siphoned off, so he can, have his do whatever and steal money from everyone, including me. So then you can present factual information. Maybe you can get a ex-cult member to come and speak, so that there's actual evidence of the fact that this is a cult. It's not just like your opinion. Maybe there are books written, or maybe there are newspaper articles. It depends on the size of the cult or whatever. But I think that what would have helped me understand my situation was actually like hard evidence. And then I think the other thing is too, is really just have to accept that once you've done your best with information and encouragement, then it's almost like you've got to just let that person like play it out in a way, but be there for them when they do realize, hey, wait a minute, this isn't a healthy situation, this is really toxic, and be there for them and show that like unconditional love. Because to get into a cult, someone has to be wounded. Like I was really vulnerable. I was looking for a guru. I was looking for a family. I was looking for a community. I was looking to make a contribution to humanity. And, people's intentions are good, but when we've got all these emotional wounds running us, then that can lead us into some really dangerous situations. So it's good to just understand that about the person who's chosen to get into the cult situation. And maybe there are people who do offer interventions. There are some cult, like there's the Cult Institute here with Ross Rosenberg, and there are other people who have actually gone in and done interventions on people. I don't know that they do that snatch and grab thing anymore, where they just take people out in the night. I don't know if that happens. I think that might be a First Amendment violation. But anyway, it's got to be an individual case by case situation, but very challenging for people who are on the outside looking in, and when you can see that there's something really wrong, and then the question is how can you help?
Would really like to understand on that aspect, Isabella, how we can really help these individuals um, who have become part of a cult that's really not contributing to their growth journey. It's majorly built around, the narcissistic abuse, being a pleaser for the cult leader out there. So how can we really enable and help these people move out and start their healing journey? Because we all as human beings, I believe, often look at, anchors for our emotional wounds. We always look at, emotional support in the world outside, whereas that actual support, is within us. So when that need and desire to have somebody, really aligning to your emotions, extending that warmth of emotional support, which is often the facades that, are put up for a cult, uh, how do we really help them move forward? Because we ourselves might not be able to give them that emotional support. We might not be able to help them remove that anchor, which is so deep into that cult's, philosophy. But yes, we know something wrong is happening with them, because we wanted them to move out, but we won't want the impact of that emotional trauma that they have gone to be coming on us. So how do we really navigate that journey?
Oh, that's such a difficult situation that you're asking about, because this is the interesting thing, is if that someone from a family is ended up in a cult situation, it's likely that unless the family members have actually done their own healing, that the that they're not really capable of helping that person, because they're still run by their own wounds. So I think the best thing we can do is work on our own healing, work on our own like emotional intelligence, our own our own spiritual path. And then, because it's really has to be up to that person in the cult to make the decision to get out. So while we can do all we can, I wanted to mention before what came to mind, there's also what I'm seeing happening here in the States, is people are using the alternative media or whatever, say YouTube or whatever, and even there's documentaries now made about cult leaders, and that, then that sort of, by getting that sort of attention, that can maybe awaken people in the cults to really look at the truth and what's happening. But it ultimately is up to that person that's in the cult to make them break, and then for the people who are there to like catch them, make sure that they've got somewhere safe to land, and that they've got like counselors or mental health professionals to speak to who understand cults and cult programming, to put those things in place and offer them. But it's still always up to the individual what, when they're going to make the move and then how they're going to do the healing. And sometimes people go back into cults. I know that the cult that I got out of, there's people who were out for years and then went back in, just because they've been so programmed to believe that the outside world is, dangerous and evil and all that, and the only safe place is with the guru in the cult. And also people's like sense of self and even just like practical skills. Once you've been in the cult and you're just doing stuff for the guru, you're not really furthering your career out in the workforce. So what do you do when you get out? What sort of work do you do? It's a long process of getting out, but it's up to the individual, really. And it must be very hard for people to watch.
Isabella, when I was going through your bio, you have mentioned something around expansion of consciousness. So can you share some thoughts around that? And how does expansion of consciousness helps in the recovery journey?
That's my favorite topic, I think. So expansion of consciousness, what does that mean? Well, for me, it means my ability to perceive reality. What's reality? I know what I can perceive through my senses and what I can perceive through my intuition, my extrasensory perceptions. So basically my ability to understand what's going on in the world around me, who I am, why I'm here, what I need to be doing, and all that. So the main ways that I have found success in doing that are through meditation and breath work, so pranayama, and also through doing challenging outdoor activities like rock climbing or mountain climbing, those sorts of things. So I'm way out of my comfort zone. I'm taking risks, like physical risks. I'm overcoming fear and all that. So that's another way. I've also used plant medicines, sacred plant medicines, entheogens, like cannabis, psilocybin, ayahuasca. And these are all sacred plant medicines. I know a lot of people think that they're just like party drugs or whatever, not so much ayahuasca, but they are mind expanding plant medicines that I believe are gifted to us in order to expand our consciousness beyond what is being presented to us by, say, through the television or the mainstream media. So we can think outside the box, because it's really important that we can break through those mental blockages. So the plant medicines, and just the important thing is to do it in a sacred and safe context, so that one is protected, because there are a lot of beings and entities that we can't see, that are non-physical. Some of them have good intentions, pure intentions. Some of them are neutral, and some of them are dark. They're evil. They just are. We can play games and call it whatever you want, but there are demons out there, and they can shapeshift and appear to be good and sound good and all that, but we really have to be very discerning and protect ourselves all the time, really, because they are waiting to take what they can from us. So make sure that that with those plant medicines, it's always about set and setting. So make sure you're safe and protected, and you're going in with an intention and a prayer, and then listen and learn, and then put into practice whatever you learn from those journeys. And then the other one is being in nature. Because if
Mhm.
you think about, just if you go and stand by the sea, for instance, and just look out into the ocean, then your mind can extend. There's no blockages, there's no buildings or roads or cars or anything like that. We're just, our mind can be free. Same thing if you do stargazing or cloud watching or sit in a forest, or, or go by a river. Just it allows our mind to be free. Well, my mind anyway. That's what I've experienced. Being on the top of a mountain and looking in expansive view. To me, that means our minds can expand. And then the most powerful one that I've only discovered perhaps in the last 10 years is sun gazing. So every morning when the sun comes up, I take the light of the sun, so the light of the sun is information. It's light codes. It's the highest information that we can receive while we're here in these bodies, physical bodies. And so I take the light and it goes into my pineal gland and pituitary gland. And I don't know what it exactly does, but it expands my consciousness. And I do that when every morning, if it's not a cloudy day or whatever. And I can also do it at sunset, and then never do it so it hurts. It should never hurt. It's not about no pain, no gain. You just have soft eyes, soft closed lids, and just let the sunlight come in for a couple of seconds to start off with, then just build up from there. So it goes like 5 seconds, 10 seconds or whatever, and just have a relaxed body, because when we're relaxed is when we receive the most information. So just be relaxed and then give thanks for whatever you've received. Don't always know what that is. And then go on with the day. So sun gazing has been the most powerful practice for me to expand my consciousness. And so they're the main practices that I've used, in addition to doing research about certain topics, just so I'm learning more. So I'm expanding my knowledge about whatever it is. For me, it's about mind control and cults and living as a sovereign being and those sorts of things. So I research all the ways that we're being controlled as a species, as humans, the ways that we're being limited and kept in fear and kept at a fairly low vibration. So there's that research too that's very helpful for expanding consciousness. That's the main ways. And of course, this sounds also just being in nature to get to receive information from plants and trees and rocks and crystals. So one can connect with those consciousnesses and then receive information from those sentient life forms, and animals too, and that expands consciousness.
Well, I totally align with the point of nature being helping us receive the expanding our consciousness out there, and for everyone it impacts and reflects in a very different manner. At the very starting episodes, we had Maria Morris from London, who helped us understand the power of nature and its healing powers, especially. So she talked about just how by hugging a tree, you feel better. How just being
Right.
in the nature itself, away from your digital devices and taking that digital detox, just immersing yourself in nature helps you reconnect with yourself and probably navigate the answers which lie within you, but you have been searching them outside. So I totally align with you, and I'm myself a very big believer of that.
It's absolutely essential for everybody to be connecting with nature every day, especially if you live in a city or if you're working around computers, and most people hold their cell phones all the time anyway, which is very debilitating for a human being. We're not designed to be living life through screens. We're just not. It makes us very mentally and physically ill, weak, and disempowered, and basically dehumanized. So time needs to be made every day to connect with nature. We need to be skin to earth every day, to be grounded. That's what it means, like directly connected to earth energy, because that's what empowers us, balances us physiologically and psychologically. We get negative ions, we get inflammation gets reduced, and inflammation causes like most of the chronic diseases. So if you're not if you're actually not directly connected to the earth every day, you're doing yourself a great disservice. And people say, oh, but there's snow on the ground or what. You can still, like you said, you can still touch trees, touch plants, touch rocks, touch crystals, touch animals that are outside, and that will help with the grounding. But the best thing you could do would be go and lie on the grass or lie on the sand and just relax with even just 5 minutes. Don't hold a cell phone. Just keep, away from electronic devices. But it's essential for our mental health and our physical health and or just our well-being. And in fact, I don't believe it's possible to optimize life without being directly connected to earth and spending some time in the quietude of nature every day. Just find a spot you can go to. It could be a park, it could be a rooftop garden, just, well, better be that it was on the ground, but, wherever you can be surrounded by plants or looking at the sky or whatever. Just find a place to go. You can be grounded through bricks, like if you walk on bricks or you walk on concrete, that's grounding as well. And if you don't want to stand with your bare feet on the ground because it's too sharp or rough or whatever, you can wear leather-soled shoes, like moccasins or whatever soled shoes. You can buy grounding sheets, and you can buy grounding computer, like mouse pads and other stuff, other devices too that you can have around your house, so that then you can get grounded if you live off the, in a high-rise building or whatever. Essential, absolutely essential to spend time in nature. And that would be the one thing to take away from this conversation, is to leave the electronic devices behind and go outside and make direct contact with nature.
Yep. That does wonders. That totally does wonders. Uh, I would retrace a back, Isabella, and one point I would like to, really get your views on is around self-criticism and self-sabotage, leading to us getting into that vicious cycle of cult programming and being part of a cult.
The best way that I deal with that, all the self-judgment and self-criticism, is what I call, it's my thought police. So I have to watch my thoughts. Really, I have to watch like every thought that comes into my head, pretty much. Like, is this a thought that I want to think? Is this thought helpful? Is this thought true? Is this thought going to uplift me or depress me? And then I can decide whether or not I want to keep thinking it. So I used to, especially when I felt in those black days when I felt really suicidal, someone said to me, if you keep thinking like that, that's where you're going to end up. So when the thought was come up, I had to stop it. And actually, sometimes I say out aloud to myself, stop, and then decide on something other than to think that I'm a bad person or a worthless person or a horrible person, and replace those negative thoughts with something positive. Like I'm a good person, I'm worthy or whatever, or even something neutral. That's better than the self-criticism and the self-judgment. So that's what's worked for me. And I have to do that all the time. It's not just not just over and done with, but I have to watch my thoughts.
I believe that's one, like, habit, or I would say a practice we all need to work on, where we start watching our thoughts, because what we often think and the narrative that we tell ourselves often manifest into our reality. So
That's
we really need to be cautious and cognizant of what we are narrating ourselves about our reality.
right. Because that our thoughts create the reality. The universe is mental. So that's where our power lies, is in our thoughts. And most of the thoughts that we think are thoughts that other people have put in our heads, and they're not necessarily true, and they're certainly not necessarily helpful or good. So it's important to monitor thoughts. And then, of course, once you monitor your thoughts, then you can be more conscious of the words that you speak, so that you're not like putting out into the world, negative energy or curses or whatever. But you can speak positively, and then comes our actions. What are we going to act upon? Are we going to take actions that are beneficial for individuals and the rest of the collective, or are we going to be selfish and take and manipulate and steal and all that? So It's kind of a paradox, because we want to live as being selfless and helpful and all that, but we really have to be kind of selfish in a way to be taking note of what's happening in our mind and what we're saying and what we're doing. Got to be really mindful of that, because that's our power. That's how we create reality.
I agree. I agree with you, and I'm in sync out there. Um, Isabella, you talked about spirituality, disconnection from spirituality at the start of your life as, one of the reasons I would say for the path, you were on. So how important, and you can correct me if I made that statement, in a very different manner, if that needs to be corrected. Why spirituality is important, and how did you discover it, and how it's enabling you today?
So for me, spirituality is this very simple way of living life with the knowledge that there's more to the world that can be perceived through the five senses, and that there is a higher power. It's called different names in all different cultures, as you know, God or universe or whatever. So that's what spirituality is for me: living as a human being, a spiritual being, and I'm connected to all that is, connected to source energy, creative energy, and I've come here to learn and grow and evolve and be a human. So that's I don't really know how to, that's central to my being. Once I understood that, which was probably in my early 20s, then that's just all that really mattered, to understand that I'm on a journey here to learn and grow. And so how can I do that? And after my husband died, what I heard, because I also listen to my intuition, I listen to I look out for signs, synchronicities. It sounds crazy, but I do hear voices. It sounds like my own voice, but I know it's my intuition, my higher self talking to me. I also get like gut feelings, and I can feel energy in my spine and all that. So I take notice. I try to notice everything that's coming like into me and then coming out from me, and then follow along with that. If I'm getting instructions, or then I follow along with that. Just trust that I'm being guided. That's what's been really important to me, to know that I am being guided, that I am protected, and to just follow along that journey. Like I was just going to say, when my husband died, what I heard was to heal and serve, heal and serve, heal and serve. So that's what that's my mantra. That's what I've been doing, and so it's central to who I am, what I'm doing, and why I'm here. And actually, it makes life so much more rich and kind of exciting and magical in a way, because it's like opening up a treasure box and treasure chest, and then finding all these jewels and treasures in there. Like, oh, I didn't know that about myself. Like, this is a trippy thing that happened that's still kind of shocking for me, but my most recent book's called New Human of New Earth, and it's a ridiculously long book. It's like 825 pages with all these 1,800 footnotes or whatever. And I published it a few months ago, and then I listened to this YouTube video, and it's called 45 Secret Teachings from Ancient Lemuria. And I'd heard about Lemuria, but I hadn't really taken much interest in it, because it was presented as like a myth and just something made up thing in a way. But when I listened to the video, all the points were about, the people from Lemuria were connected to nature, and they were totally focused on their own spiritual evolution, but also the evolution of them as a collective. And they used crystal healing and sound healing, and it was all about light. And I thought, I must have somehow plagiarized Lemurian wisdom, because that's really what my book's about. My book's really about a remembrance of how to live as a divine human, understanding our selves as spiritual beings with body technologies and medicines from the natural world and all that. And I realized that the information that I've brought forth is Lemurian wisdom. So I've somehow, some way carried forth that ancient wisdom from that time. Maybe I was there. Maybe it's just so tapped into that consciousness because I'm here in Hawaii, which was known as Mu. It's like a remnant of the land of Mu that sunk into the seas many eons ago. So yeah, it makes life so much more fascinating living a spiritual life.
Well, can you shed some, more light about what you have included in your book? What can readers, really expect in your book? What would they find?
Well, like I said, it's a remembrance of how to thrive as a sovereign, divine human being. So understanding that that's why we're here, and then basically it's like how know thyself, right? That's such an important journey to go on. So understanding oneself, and then as a human being, so we have our body that we can use to, we've got this our voice, we can sing sounds, all that can help us with our healing. We can move, we can exercise or do yoga or whatever that helps us with our journey. We can use our breath that can help us along our journey. And then we've got also there's things that people don't really just gloss over. So walking's so important. We can skip, we can hang from branches, all these sorts of things that are seen as so simple, but they're really very effective in strengthening our bodies, because we don't have to be an Olympic weightlifter, but it's important to have at least a strong physical presence, because we are containers for divine essence, love, light, or whatever. So it's important to have a strong physical body. And then there are these other technologies that I'm sure that the ancients knew about them, but they've been glossed over, because there's this one that's called raising the chrism, or the sacred secretion, or whatever. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a little bit too long to go into the moment, but it's basically this alchemical sort of physical process that's initiated every month when the moon is in the same sign as the sun was when we were born. And these fluids are released from the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, and they travel down all through the chakras to the sacrum, where they're alchemized, travels back up again into across the corpus callosum here into I think it's the hypothalamus for 3 days, like the cave for 3 days, and then it gets released. And apparently that's when all sorts of renewal processes can happen with the body, and that's how the yogis live for thousands of years and all that. But that's available to each of us every month. But if we don't know about it, or if we don't there aren't the right conditions in our body, like if there's alcohol or drugs or whatever, that the process gets destroyed. So the book includes processes like that, and then also a lot of the technologies that are available to us in nature, like we've been talking about: sunlight, grounding, use of crystal medicine, then all the different stones, that there are basically the natural world is a sort of it's a pharmacy really for us. And then I also talk about this is my thing that I've been studying lately, is the dangers of AI, and how people are replacing being human with AI. People are farming out their creative abilities and using these technologies, which might seem to be helpful, but in the end, really, it's creating a race of techno humans who are actually using technology and living life through technology more than through the natural world. And so there's a chapter on AI and being more mindful about using it and not handing over our innate human power, creativity, and presence to technologies like that. And then the other thing that the book I explained my understanding of the COVID psyop that just happened and how that really changed people's ways of being in the world and put a lot of people in danger, and how as a species that's just one example of how we're being manipulated and controlled to stay fearful and ignorant and sick, and so that understanding that humanity's really being enslaved in a cult. And that's and then that cult runs through the financial system, the religious organizations, politics, the medical system. These are all like tentacles of the cult that keep people controlled and living lives that aren't, because we really, if we're living in society and, the 5-day work week and a couple of weeks off a year, we're really not free. And we're really not, we're serving a master. Everyone's like scraping to get by, and there's another level of, well, there are many levels, but there are other people who are like feeding off our efforts. And it's important to realize that, and then you can make a decision. Do you want to keep participating in that cult, or do you want to extract yourself and live as a sovereign being? But knowing that we're the ones that have that power, we don't have to participate. There are ways to extract oneself, and so I write about that as well.
Well, well, that's amazing. That's amazing, Isabella. Thanks for sharing. And why don't you share the link to your book? We would be more than happy to put it in the description out there for our listeners and to check it out and understand all on these things.
This is what it looks like.
One thing, wow, that's an amazing cover.
I know. And everyone's struggling to read tweets at the moment. So anyway, it was the book that needed to be written, so I wrote it.
That's good. That's good. We need to go with the intuition that's coming to us. I always go with my gut. I can relate to when you say that our body speaks to us, our higher self speaks to us through a different signals in the body. I am a very firm believer of that.
Right. And if we listen to that and trust that and follow that information, then we'll always be in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. And then one can relax in that rather than, wondering, oh my God, what am I, am I doing the right thing? Am I, should I be doing something else? And then for me, that's created I can just relax a little bit, even with all the chaos and the dramas playing out on the world stage. I know within myself that I'm in the right place, that I'm safe, and that I'm protected.
Wow. Isabella, any final concluding thoughts you would like to share with our listeners?
I'll just be repeating what I've said. It's important to question everything. Like, don't be trusting what you're hearing on the mainstream news or through the governments or even doctors or scientists or whatever. Always be questioning. Is this true? Is this right for me? Is this right for my family? And keep an open mind, because we are being manipulated in a lot of ways. We have the support of countless beings of love and light who are not non-physical, who are available to help us. They need to be asked first. So we can ask for help. We can ask for guidance. We can ask for whatever it is we need, strength, courage, whatever. So know that help is available. And then spend, like I've said, as much time as possible away from electronic devices, black screen technologies, and AI or whatever, because they're in a lot of ways they are making us very mentally and physically ill, and they're dehumanizing us. And the most important thing is for us to stay human, and remember that for our children, to be taking the children outdoors. Let children play, let them be free, because people say, oh, the children are the future of humanity, but not if they're going to be staring at screens and they don't know how to have a conversation or resolve conflicts or play or have fun and enjoy life. They're just staring at screens. So remember that the children need to be taken outdoors and and given that playtime as well. And yeah, just be human every day. Do something that what I do is every day I do something that's going to support my physical health, whether that's drinking a glass of lemon water in the morning, or cooking and eating a meal from scratch. Do something good for me, something that's good for someone else, whether it's helping a neighbor or whatever, cooking food and sharing it. And then do something that's fun. And so they say, like, laugh every day, and just and then do something creative, whatever that is for you, whether that's cooking or gardening, dancing, singing, playing music, playing games. Just do human stuff, and trust that we're in a very you would understand this too, that we're changing from the one yuga to another, or from the Kali Yuga to the Dwapara Yuga, and we're going from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And this is what it is. This is what it's like to be in the crucible of change, where there's a lot of chaos. So by staying connected to the earth, by staying embodied and staying human, we can move through this phase with more grace than chaos. And then our contribution is one of peace and love, rather than one of outrage and anger. I mean, there's plenty of things to be outraged, and I mean, some people are called to go out and make noise about things, but it's also an important contribution to be at peace and be a loving, kind human being.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Isabella, today, for sharing the space with us and sharing your journey. Just take a second and conclude the conversation. Um, Once again, I would like to thank you for sharing not just your story, but such profound insights into the consciousness, cult programming, and freedom. And Isabella, I'm really grateful to you for trusting me and our audience with your life journey so candidly. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Pulkit. Thank you so much for your questions, for the respectful, kind space that you hold, and for the platform that you're offering people to come on and share their stories. And yeah, really grateful for that. And it's important work that you're doing. So I'm sending you all my love and light.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And to our listeners, if you have ever struggled with stress, anxiety, trauma, or even confusion about whether your wellness path is serving you, I invite you to pause and reflect on today's discussion. And remember, you're not alone. If you'd like to share your stress triggers, worries, or experiences anonymously, head over to the link in the description and connect with our We Are Listening platform, which is anonymous. And remember, your voice matters. And sometimes just expressing it is the first step to healing. Until next time, I'm Pulkit Garg signing off. And remember, we are listening. Thank you.